In the next few minutes, I will show you how to configure oXygen to work with both XML Schema 1.1 and XML Schema 1.0. As you may already know, oXygen is offering XML Schema 1.1 support for quite a while, but until the 15.2 release, you could have only one XML schema profile active at a certain time, so you could not work with XML Schema 1.0 and then switch very fast to XML 1.1 profile. So one request from our user was to enable them to switch more easily between the two schema profiles. So as a solution, we came with using the new XML schema versioning support to set the XML schema at a document level. So in the XML Schema 1.1 introduces a new namespace, which is the version control namespace. The minVersion and maxVersion attributes belong to this namespace, and they can be added to any element declaration in the schema or on the schema root. Their role is to indicate which version of the schema, which version of the schema specification the declaration belongs to. Here's a small example on how to use these attributes. On the person element declaration in the schema, we specified that is available only to XML schema processors that are compatible to 1.1 version to 2.2. There are random values. In oXygen, you can specify the XML schema version in two ways. One is at the application level. You can use the default XML schema version option in the application preferences. This is the default value that the application will use when your document doesn't specify a version. And the second one is at the document level, using the versioning attributes mentioned earlier. oXygen determines the XML schema version which your schema belongs to from the versioning attributes set on the schema root. This value takes precedence on the global option set in the application preferences. So you can set the XML schema version on a new schema or on an existing document by using the new XML schema version, the new XML Schema Wizard, which allows you to choose between XML Schema 1.0, 1.1, or to choose the default XML schema version. This is the setting set in the application options. Or you can use on an existing document the change XML schema version contextual action, which enables you to choose between one of the two versions of schemas. Or you can directly edit the versioning attributes directly in the document. So when you're changing the version of your schema, oXygen automatically detects the version you just set, and configures the validation engine, the content completion processor, and also the additional views like the palette view, the facets view, or the attributes view. I will show you in the application. We'll open a schema that notice the message on the top of the document. It lets you know that you are currently using the 1.0 profile, so you can change the version from here. In our schema, I have a default open content set, which is a component specific to the 1.1 profile. So if I validate the schema, I will have two errors in the document. One of one of the error message suggests that the validation processor has detected the default open content element and let us suggest to switch to the 1.1 schema profile. So I'll use the action mentioned earlier, change XML schema version. I'll select XML schema 1.1, and if I validate again the document, the document is valid. Also, oXygen, when detects the XML schema version, it also uses this to configure the schema additional tools like the instance generator, the schema documentation generator, or the flattened schema tool. In the conclusion, when setting the XML schema version at the document level, it helps you to deal with different versions of schema in the same project. So you won't have to go to preference each time to change an option. Okay, thank you. You have any questions?
Just to summarize this, the problem with XML schema is that the version attribute is for the schema version, not for the schema language version, right? Like we have in XSLT. And there are VC minVersion, column minVersion, and VC column maxVersion attributes that allow you to say, if you use that on the schema element itself, then you specify minVersion is 1.0, maxVersion is 1.1, but you need to be careful because the max is open. So that means not 1.1, less than 1.1, right? Which is kind of confusing, and that's why we added all these actions, because it will be difficult for you to say XML schema 1.0 document is one that says maxVersion 1.1, right? It's kind of confusing. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.